First time installing new bars, what do you reckon?
A very common upgrade you might want to do at home is change your head stem on your bike. Whether it be to change the length for your bike fitting purpose, to change it to a bling looking one, or whatever it might be, this is a really common thing you might want to do at home. This is the exact same process for a road bike and a mountain bike. So don't be afraid if you've got something totally different than this, the same lessons will apply. So we're going to show you how to remove your old stem and then put your new stem on and safely and correctly tighten up the faceplate, and then safely and correctly tighten up the pinch bolts and make sure that you are safe and ready to hit the trails or hit the road and be comfortable riding with your new stem. So let's jump in and we'll show you how to do it. So get your bike set up in a work stand or somewhere nice and stable. On the ground is actually really good for this job because the forks won't fall out when it's on the ground. You'll need to get your new stem. We've got this slightly longer stem for this mountain bike here. You'll need either a set of Allen keys, or ideally, if you've got one or you have access to one, a torque wrench. The torque wrench is much more important if you've got carbon fiber parts, so you don't over tighten and damage anything. If you haven't used these before, 3-way Allen keys are a must-have in a bicycle workshop. These save you a lot of time, but your regular Allen keys will be okay too. So to start with, what we're going to do with the bike on the ground is we're going to remove the faceplate for the stem. These will always have 4 bolts, so we can just start removing them 1 bolt at a time. I would suggest that you lay your bolts out in a clean space on your workbench where they're not going to get dirt and dust in the threads. So go and whiz all these bolts out. When you get into your last bolt, you'll need to hold the handlebars so they don't fall off when the final thread comes out. So what we'll do is we'll undo it whilst holding it. Then we can remove the faceplate without dropping the bolt. And then handlebars, I'd recommend we just leave them nice and safely hanging in front of the bike, hanging off the cables. Next thing, we need to loosen off the pinch bolts for the steer tube. So these will usually be facing opposite directions, so we can loosen this off a fair way. Loosen this off a fair way. Now the stem is loose on the steerer, we can take the top cap off and remove the stem. There's a spacer under this, so we'll put that aside. Then we can slip the stem off. At this point, we can get our new stem, and what's a good idea is to check the stack heights on the stem. If the new stem that we're going to put on is taller or shorter, we'll either need to add or remove some spacers to end up with the same arrangement when you put it back on. So luckily this one's very similar, so it's a perfect swap. So now we can start to install our new stem. They'll often have a direction, which is reversible on some bikes, or in this particular one, it's a single direction stem, and we want to get the logos in the correct direction. So we can put the stem on, then we can get our spacer and top cap again, and put this on first. And we can do up the headset top bolt just firm, just to pull the headset bearings together. If you want to understand how this all works, how it goes together, and why we only have to do this up firm, go back and check out our how-to headset video and you'll learn all about this sort of stuff. But for the moment, just do the top cap just firm, and then we can leave that and move on to the handlebars. So now we can remove the stem faceplate on our new stem. This particular one has 2 individual faceplates. I'd recommend you leave the bolts, either one of the bolts or both the bolts in the faceplate ready to go for ease of install. We'll do the same on this. Now we can reinstall our new handlebars. So we'll hold them in position and we can install the faceplate. Once we get it started on the threads, we're pretty safe to let go of the handlebars from this point. We add the second one. I'd recommend you start these threads with your fingers to avoid cross-threading. Then we can get our Allen key and we can start to whiz them down in. once we got this a little bit tighter, this is where things get more serious and we have to really take into consideration a few important factors. So the important factors when you are installing your new stem, or actually installing your handlebars into your new stem, are to get the faceplates even on the bars. So you'll find there'll be a gap between the faceplates and the stem on both sides in most cases. On pretty much all stems, you really want to ensure that this gap is even on the top and the bottom. That's on most things, except on some situations where it might have a little graphic, or some brands will say no gap on the top. And on those ones, you have to ensure there's no gap at the top and all the gaps at the bottom. But this gap being even is very important for even clamping. And then the next thing that's important is the tightening pattern on the faceplate. So what we'll need to do is a cross tightening pattern where we'll tighten, once we get them all up to having a little bit of tension on them, as we tighten it down, we'll start with number 1, and then we'll come across to number 2, and then we'll come across to the other side again for number 3, then across to number 4, and then back up to number 1, 2, 3, 4. And we want to tighten down until we get to our torque setting across these bolts evenly. So now that we've started to do this up, ensuring that the gaps are nice and even on the top and the bottom, and it's just starting to get a little bit of tension, we can start to torque them down to spec. This is where you want your torque wrench to do this. So pretty much all stems in most situations are 5 to 6 Newton meters for both the clamp of the stem and the steer tube. But it's probably a good idea for you to either look on your stem for the torque settings, or to look them up on the dealer manual or on Google if you haven't got them. So this one here, we've just started to get a little bit of tension on the bolts. Now we've got some tension on these bolts, it's time to get the torque wrench out and do it correctly. So we've got this currently set to 6 Newton meters as BergTech wants us to. So what we'll do is we'll start number 1 up here, and we'll tighten it down. Then we'll come over to this one here, number 2. Here. Then we'll come to number 3. Then we'll come to number 4. And we'll probably be starting to reach our torque setting. Hear that? That's the torque wrench beeping right there. Then we'll come back to number 1. There's the torque wrench. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. And then we'll repeat the process, and in an ideal world, we should be pretty much at our torque setting now. Yep. 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 So that's all torqued up to spec, and the faceplate is ready to go, as long as we got the gaps nice and even on the top and the bottom. So now it's time to move on to the pinch bolts for the steer tube. So the final step is we'll need to align our handlebars with the front wheel and then do up our pinch bolts. So different bikes will have different sort of visuals and different ways to get your bars correct. My best advice on a mountain bike or a road bike or whatever it is, I try to get over the center of the bike, close one eye and look down, and I'll either try to use, on a mountain bike, I'll try to use either the front side of the bars or the back side of the bars lined up to the fork crown, or I'll try to, on a road bike, line up the front side of the handlebars down with the face of the dropouts, which you can see. So you can sort of get backwards and forth and see, I can see the left but not the right, so you'll tweak it a little bit, check it again, tweak it. Once you've got this in nice alignment, which can take some practice, we'll do up the pinch bolts. So we're going to use a very similar process to the faceplate, where we're going to alternate between the 2 bolts. So we've got our torque wrench again, set to the correct torque setting for this. So again, we'll start with one side, we'll do this one up, and then we'll come back to the other side and do this one up. And now it's starting to get tight. We'll look for our torque setting, there it is there. Then we'll come back to this one here. Yep, there it is. And back to this one here. And we're going to go back and forth between the bolts until they both even out at the desired torque setting. Once these are done up and it's in alignment, the faceplate's done up, and you've double checked that it's tight and it's not going to move on you, you're ready to go for a bike ride. So with your new skill, take this, try it at home, and let us know how you go.